in a world filled with life. A space cracked, and a human fell on the riverbank. The human appeared insignificant compared to the gigantic river. Just after he fell, dark red spots began to appear on his body. Slowly his body began to melt and become a black-red gooey stuff. A few minutes later, the human body is thoroughly decomposed into a blood-red liquid, and what remains becomes a black cocoon. Later, the black cocoon began to move, and a fist-sized black tadpole-like creature broke free from the cocoon and looked at the surroundings without knowing where to go and what to do. Suddenly the ground began to vibrate. The tadpole-like creature on instinct moved away from the bloody mess and hid itself in the nearby bushes. This creature doesn't have that much thinking process. It looked around the surroundings in its perception, in which it can only see living beings, and looks around to see possible living beings. A few minutes later, the creature found a group of black eggs with half a meter height in the small space beside a small swamp a few meters away from the riverbank. The creature had an unknown desire to approach the egg, so the creature, without wasting time, approached the egg and touched it with its round egg-shaped head. When the creature touched the egg, it melted itself into the egg and disappeared into one of the 5 eggs in the swamp. Moments later, a huge black shadow appeared above the eggs and covered almost all the eggs and the swamp in its shadow. It is a gigantic black snake that is 20 meters long with 2 meters wide. It has light crimson eyes. It looked around as its tongue slithered and made a noise. Hisses. Then it looked around in confusion, as it came out sensing something moving around. But upon finding nothing, it stopped its scouting, entered the swamp, and disappeared. Everything returned to normal. In this wildlife where giant snakes and other wild animals continued their life as usual. But except for an egg that the tadpole-like creature melted into, it is undergoing an unknown mutation. A few days later, the bloodstain and the bloody mess left by the human remains on the riverbank disappeared in the rain. In the swamp where the eggs were located, one egg is shaking pretty hard constantly, and with a crackling sound an egg is broken as the snake, that is slightly different from other snakes, came out of it, and at the same time, other eggs also broke and the newborn snakes came out one by one. The snake looked around in confusion as it thought to itself, "Where am I and who am I?" The black snake looked around in confusion at other snakes and spent a short time in confusion for a while. Until the mother snake came out of the swamp and looked at its newborn snakes. The snake looked at the mother snake in disbelief, as it had never seen the snake that big according to some unknown common sense. Suddenly the snake found new information in its mind about itself while it was in shock. Bloodline creature, 1/4. Age, 0/100 years. Race, snake, juvenile. Talent, endless growth, 0%. The snake suddenly has this information in its mind. The snake digested the information and thought to itself, "What the hell is this?" The snake can feel it has forgotten something important. But it doesn't put that much effort into that thought. The snake is very hungry, and the empty stomach makes it difficult to think about anything else. So without wasting time, it followed the other newborn snakes and looked for food in the surroundings. In a forest beside the river, a green-yellow frog is croaking as it looks for its next prey on damp water beside a tree. An insect is flying around and looking for something to eat to live to the end of its pitiful short life. Even though it is bigger than the average insect in this forest and can flap its wings without making any sound, it can't escape nature. Suddenly, an ear-piercing sound came as a red comet approached the fly at a speed it couldn't react and retracted. Only then can we see that it's the action of the frog that is the same color as a forest and hunts insects as its prey with this camouflage skill. As the frog swallows the insect into its mouth, the prey is covered with saliva to make it immobile. A drop of saliva fell to the ground and made the bunch of ants lose control of their body and drop on the ground without any movement. Because the frog's poisonous saliva freezes the nerve movements of anything that it touches, so most of the animals won't hunt these frogs. Because of that, these poisonous frogs can survive well in this part of the forest. As the frog enjoyed its meal, suddenly it disappeared and a swallowing sound could be heard as a drop of bright purple blood from the frog fell to the ground from nowhere. Moments later, a change occurred in the environment as a snake's body could be seen transparently. Slowly the snake's real body appeared. It was a black snake with light crimson eyes. After satisfying its hunger, the snake looked at the puddle of water with a dazed expression and thought to itself, "What is my name? What is the name? Yeah, it's unique to me. How do I know about this?" As the snake thought too much, it began to get frustrated without finding any answer to its questions. So, the snake stopped thinking about these types of things and began to concentrate on the things like how to survive, how to hunt efficiently and grow strong and become stronger like its mother. After forming a relatively simple plan, it began to look for the next target to hunt. A few days later, a black snake is moving around in a dense forest vigilantly looking for food. Finally, it found a frog that was much bigger than the average frog it hunted in the beginning. The frog, also surrounded by its companions, looked majestic and croaked a few times at female frogs to expand the frog population with its excellent seeds. There are only a few female frogs and big frogs in the small pond with a few inches in depth beside a big hollow tree that's suitable for its habitat. The snake used the camouflage skill inherited from its bloodline to turn the same color as the surroundings and then approached the frog to the extent that it couldn't sense, opened its mouth and dispersed a fog that was colorless and odorless. Slowly, the snake slithered around the habitat of the frog and poisoned all the frogs. A few minutes later, all the frogs began to lose control over their body and fell into the water. The big frog looked around in puzzlement as it also lost control over its body and fell along with the female frog even though it was resistant to basic poisonous substances. Suddenly the frog found to its astonishment that other female frogs began to disappear right before its eyes. Just as the big frog is in deep self-doubt, a snake opened its mouth and swallowed it whole along with the female frog. The snake turned off the camouflage skill and then slithered towards the hollow tree and got inside as it sensed that it's gonna shed its skin with the information that appeared in its mind. Bloodline creature, 1/4. Age, 0/100 years. Race, snake, juvenile. Talent, endless growth, 98%. The snake concentrated deeply as it was currently free from hunger and urgency, unlike before. The information in its mind changed along with the food it began to digest. Talent, endless growth, 99%. Talent, endless growth, 100%. Then the ever-changing notification stopped, as the snake began to feel that it could now begin to shed its skin and grow, and it is sure, it can also postpone the shedding to any time possible. But the snake also understands the advantages of molting, and with the current situation, it decided to molt and become stronger, as this can increase the chances of survival. So without wasting time, it began to grow at a rapid pace by consuming the energy in its body and shed its old skin in the process easily without any difficulties due to its rapid growth. The snake's more than half-a-meter fat body began to stretch, and all its abilities were strengthened as the snake shed its skin. A few moments later, only a very skinny meter-length black snake with shiny scales and crimson eyes remained. The snake looked around with hungry eyes as all the fat and energy in its body was used to strengthen and grow its body. So the snake decided that it wouldn't shed skin next time without having enough food to replenish the lost energy in the shedding process. With unstoppable hunger, the black snake began to move out of the tree and looked around for something to fill its stomach. It can't even use most of its abilities such as camouflage and poison with a weakened body. So it began to look for anything to fill its stomach and then think about anything else. Even though the